Branch detail is an Army program that aligns officer strength with manning requirements, as some branches need more lieutenants than captains, while for other branches the reverse is true. In other words, some branches can temporarily donate lieutenants to other branches. The Army's donor branches are Military Intelligence, Signal Corps, Finance and Controller, Adjutant General, and Engineers. Recipient branches are Infantry, Armor, Field Artillery, and Chemical. These branches have a larger requirement for lieutenants. The branch detail program balances these requirements by assigning officers from donor branches to serve their lieutenant time in recipient branches. In fact, nearly 2/3 of donor branch allocations each year are earmarked for branch detail. So if a donor branch has 100 allocations, only 1/3 of those officers will serve in that branch as a lieutenant. Because the Army needs so many branch detail officers to meet its officer manning requirements, cadets volunteering to branch detail significantly increase their odds of receiving a basic branch of choice. After 3 to 4 years, branch detail officers will transfer back to their basic branch by attending its Captain's Career Course, after which they will continue their career in their basic branch.
Before going to my basic branch, I served 4 years in the infantry.
So I served in my detail branch as an armor officer for my first 4 years in the Army.
I served 44 months as a branch detail infantry officer.
I served in armor for about 4 years before I transitioned over.
There are 2 common myths surrounding branch detailing. The first is that branch detail officers are treated differently by leaders in their detail branch or by their peers after returning to their basic branch. The second is that branch detail officers fall behind their basic branch peers in branch-specific skills. Neither myth is true. Since the majority of donor branch lieutenants are branch detailed, they are an integral part of the 2 branches in which they serve, and both branches recognize their importance and contributions. Donor branches ensure that their lieutenants gain the necessary expertise by providing specific training to facilitate the transition back to their basic branches. Branch detail officers also become more well-rounded because they have the opportunity to serve in and experience 2 different branch cultures.
I think the biggest thing that I wish I'd known prior to choosing the branch detail was that there aren't as many negative stigmas about it that people like to assume there are.
When I served as an armor officer, I did not feel any disadvantage coming from either the armor branch or my immediate leadership.
I don't think branch detail officers are looked down on by, for me, field artillery branch. In fact, it largely was unnoticed for me. I felt like I was in the unit as a field artillery officer and respected as a field artillery officer. And whenever I switched over to military intelligence, I felt like I was probably more respected than my peers who were not branch detailed, just because I understood the language that the maneuver commander spoke.
The process of transitioning from armor to the intel branch to me felt pretty smooth. Overall, there were no significant roadblocks. Personally, I think the MI branch does a very good job of transitioning the officers. I went through the officer transition course prior to attending MI career course, and that just was a quick month-long experience getting me familiarized with the intelligence preparation of the battlefield process, and I felt very prepared, and my peers felt very prepared to actually start the captain's career course.
I spent good 4.5 years as an armor officer, and the last 2.5 years of that was sort of a nice transition into the Signal Corps, thanks to some phenomenal leaders that I had.
So the transition from the receiving branch and from the donor branch was a little rough at first because the transition was actually online course. So for the transition it was hard at first, but over time it all started to make sense coming from the operational picture and then applying it to what I was going to do as a supporter.
While the branch detail program clearly benefits the Army, it also provides several benefits to each branch detailed officer.
If you have that opportunity to detail, What it does is it teaches you how to be the customer, which enables you as the supporter the knowledge of how do I enable that warfighter in order to fight and win on that objective.
Huge benefits. By detailing, I feel that I was a better signal officer because I knew what my organization needed internally. I was prepared to support them there and also put more focus on what the squadron needed externally.
I was able to realize the benefits of branch detailing because I was able to speak directly and efficiently, not just to the battalion staff, to the majors and to the battalion commander, but I was also able to speak effectively to the captains who were commanding the companies themselves.
The greatest benefits of being a field artillery officer was leading soldiers, and I did that for my first several years in the Army as an artillery officer in both kind of smaller teams as a fire direction officer, and then ultimately as the leader of a 3-gun section platoon that trained up and we deployed to Afghanistan.
In the infantry, I got to spend 2 years as an XO, and not only do it in a train up, but I got to be an XO deployed in Afghanistan. And that knowledge and that experience was invaluable to me transitioning over to signal.
As the new intelligence officer who hadn't done anything intelligence-wise, but had been an armor officer deployed to Afghanistan, immediately I had credibility, and I was able to use that credibility to my advantage to best help out my unit as their new S2. If a tanker is looking through their scopes, I can actually tell them what they're going to see because I used to be a tanker.
As you consider the branching process, remember these 4 key points about branch detail. First, branch detail is necessary to meet the Army's officer manning requirements. Second, branch detail makes up the majority of donor branch allocations, so volunteering to branch detail significantly increases your chances of getting your preferred branch. Third, branch detail officers are highly valued by both donor and recipient branches. And fourth, branch detail officers become well-rounded leaders because they experience multiple branch cultures and build leadership expertise in both the combat arms and support roles.